Evening, distinguished panelists and guests. Uh, I'm sorry I'm not present today because of other engagements. I'm very thankful to C-STEP for this invitation. I'll be talking about the impact of climate change on agriculture and livelihoods. I'm heading a program in Andhra Pradesh, which is called the AP Community Managed Natural Farming, and I will, talk to you based on our experiences in this program. First of all, there are multiple emergencies as far as agriculture livelihoods and consumers are concerned, and climate change. So these are all interrelated. You have farmers' distress, which is increasing year after year, mainly on account of ever increasing costs of cultivation, declining soil fertility, weather uncertainties, market uncertainties. And then you have the problem with the consumers. The food that you're eating is not safe, it also lacks essential nutrients, and there's also a possibility of food scarcity. And then you have the environmental crisis, where there is a continuous soil degradation. We are losing soil organic matter. Extreme weather events are intensifying, greater frequency of these events, and there is a water emergency. There is global warming, decreased biodiversity, water pollution, air pollution. So there are multiple emergencies which we're all facing, and so that's a very serious problem. And but this is the thing that I want to mention, that the way we are doing agriculture, the way we are managing the food system itself is causing climate change. So both food systems are victims of climate change. At the same time, the food system, agricultural livelihoods themselves are causing climate change. And that is, I think, a very serious matter. And we are losing topsoil, we are losing soil organic matter, and all this is going as CO2. So, because of deforestation, forest fires, burning crop residues, ploughing, keeping lands fallow, overgrazing, excess irrigation, wind and water erosion, and for the last 70 years, use of biocides, chemical fertilizers, pesticides, herbicides, weedicides. So all this put together is one of the biggest causes of climate change. So this is the irony of our situation at present. So is there a solution? And in my opinion, for the sake of future generations, we should look at mitigation and not just resilience and adaptation. I think that is the need of the hour for all of us, scientists, policymakers. All of us have to come together. And is there a solution? So I want to quote from Bill Mollison. He said, "Though the problems of the world are increasingly complex, the solutions remain embarrassingly simple." Is this really true? Our experience shows that it is true. So, what is that simple solution? That solution is farming in harmony with nature, not farming against nature. And so, the community managed natural farming is a regenerative agriculture practice which mimics what is happening in nature. So, in natural farming, we believe that there is a complex ecosystem which consists of plants, roots, root exudates, soil biology, soil minerals, animals, human beings. And the source of energy is the sun, the solar energy, which through photosynthesis enables carbon from a gaseous stage to become liquid carbon, and that is driving life. Now, this balance has been disturbed very violently, especially over the last 70 years. So, therefore, it is in our hands to change the land management practices to be in harmony with nature. And this is what we have been attempting in Andhra Pradesh. So, there are certain universal principles of natural farming which apply across the world. They're not, specific to India. They apply across the world, and these are very simple principles. One, soil to be covered with crops, the living root, because that is how the liquid carbon is getting into the soil. And we need diverse crops, not monocrops. Soil should not be disturbed. We should integrate animals into farming. Biostimulants as necessary catalysts because we have destroyed the soil biology below ground. So, therefore, these are catalysts. And we should increase the crop residues, animal dung residues on the soil using indigenous seeds, pest management through non-chemical means. And this is an absolute principle: no synthetic fertilizers, no synthetic pesticides, herbicides, weedicides. So these 9 principles are universal. What is unique to India, and that makes the transition smoother in India, is the traditionally used uh, biostimulants, which are accelerating the process of reviving the biology below the ground. And they are in the form of microbial seed treatment, and then microbial soil enhancement, the Bijamrita, Jivamrita, the various Panchakavya, Dashaparni, various formulations which have come from farmers and have also been popularized by Sri Subhash Palekar. So this biostimulants is a very unique feature in Indian agriculture which enables this transition to happen. But this is not a standalone feature. It is to be used in conjunction with all other principles of natural farming. And there is one very unique breakthrough we have achieved in Andhra Pradesh, which again has a very important bearing on climate change mitigation, is what we call as pre-monsoon dry sowing. I'll explain that in a subsequent slide. Now, this is what we have achieved in Andhra Pradesh in taking this technology to people. From 40,000 farmers in 2016-17, this year we'll be reaching 10 lakh farmers and farm workers, landless farm workers. So we would have reached out to 16% farmers. So now technology is one thing, taking to people is another technology. So the science is, the knowledge of natural farming is one thing, but more important according to me is how this knowledge is taken to people. And that is where, in Andhra Pradesh, we believe that there are 5 pillars. So first, of course, the role of government in promoting this, providing resources. Then there is one very unique principle that we followed on ground, that is knowledge dissemination through farmers themselves. So farmer to farmer extension. Then the other pillar at the grassroots level is the role of women collectives, women self-help groups. They are really the champions for taking this forward. And then we believe that this requires hand-holding, long-term hand-holding, and that's where government and NGOs and farmers organizations have come together to provide this long hand-holding support to farmers making this transition. And of course, new knowledge, research is driving many of our interventions. So all of these have to go together to enable a technology to reach people and enable behavior change to happen, and thereby enable transformation to happen. And this is, the way our women self-help groups are planning, sharing knowledge, and learning and financing this change. Uh, then in this slide, you can see the way our this lady, she's a master farmer, Sarojini Amma. So she's 70 plus. She's a master trainer, and farmers believe her. And then she helps them to may do the transition. We also have young agriculture graduates to be embedded in the villages. So this knowledge dissemination innovation is very important, because then it's a two-way transfer. Because she learns from farmers, she teaches farmers, and both of them are telling us something. So somewhere I think there's science and technology not as a linear one-way process, but as a dialogue, as a two-way process, becomes important in the dissemination process. And we have very strong place for science in driving our program. And as you can see, we have collaborations with FAO, UN, World Agroforestry, University of Reading, an Australian scientist, Walter Jena, CSTEP, CEW, the National Institutes. And we're doing research on a variety of things: socio-economic impact, what's happening to soils, water, biodiversity, etc. And the results from this experiment are feeding into our knowledge, and the questions from the field are then again taken back to the scientific institutions for a solution. So I believe that we, for us, science and knowledge has been very important in this revolution. What are the impacts? Now, this technology is ensuring that the farmers' economics have improved significantly, livelihoods have improved very significantly, costs of cultivation have come down. There is no particular yield penalty. In many cases, yields from natural farming are higher, and more important is better resilience, better soil health, crop health, etc. And we see very positive impact on health, especially of children. We see improved biodiversity, and you see this is a 2020 floods in October, November, and you can see neighboring fields. This is a paddy field. So after the water receded, the ZBNF plot, natural farming plot, is intact, whereas the chemically conventional plot is completely damaged. Again, neighboring fields, one is intact, the other is completely damaged. This is a cotton field. So one of the most important factors has been resilience to extreme weather events, and that is something which is really a blessing. Uh, then we had a innovation, as I mentioned. It's a unique initiative in the world. Uh, we learned from an Australian scientist that we can harness water from the air, and that is the strength of natural farming. We tried this experiment with 11 young agriculture graduates. We were successful, and this year we have more than 90,000 farmers who are driving this initiative. So what it offers is, even in semi-arid areas where even one crop is difficult, our farmers can actually take three crops. And this is drought tolerance, reversal of land degradation, reversal of desertification through this breakthrough in our understanding and adopting, tweaking our natural farming practices. You can see this farmer in Anantapur. Earlier he would have taken only one crop, but now through natural farming is actually able to take three crops throughout the year. And this is by harnessing water from the air, as Walter Jena had formulated, and we learned from him. And you can see here the income of this farmer has more than doubled by this simple innovation. And this is a very, from 43,000 per annum, this farmer's income has gone to 107,000 rupees. This innovation is extremely important because what we understand, we are doing more research, that this can also lead to cooling of the planet. So this is the promise of this technology of harnessing water from the air, that we can actually cool the planet safely and by following principles of nature in a reasonable period of time. So I would like to conclude here, and await your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Vijay Kumar. It was wonderful. I, as an individual, of course, have been fortunate to have actually visited and then seen for myself, the kind of changes that have been brought about by this wonderful program. Now, I think the beauty of it, as you very nicely kind of demonstrated, is that uh, it has definitely local benefits, but going upward, there are lots of benefits at the national level also, because here is a model which could be taken forward, and this is something the entire nation is grappling with. Rainfed agriculture being the dominant system in place, there is a need to find innovative ways to kind of buffer the shocks that the farmers are facing day in and day out, and climate change is one such shock. And of course, over and above that, it also has global implications, because at the outset, it is also kind of contributing positively to mitigating climate change in its own way. And of course, adaptation and resilience is at the heart of this program. Sir, through your experience, vast experience of spearheading such a wonderful program for many years, I would want you to kind of share with us, how one can actually internalize and mainstream climate considerations, given that the specter of climate change is growing much clearer over the years, with more and more extreme events being experienced even within our lifetimes, and lots of studies and research indicating that going forward, these are going to be much more severe and much more frequent. So that's going to be the new normal. So if we ignore that, we're going to be ignoring a large piece of the puzzle. So kindly throw light on how we can internalize and mainstream climate considerations, sir.
Actually, Dr. Murthy, it remains a puzzle. You know it, I know it, but neither that seriousness is not felt at different levels, whether it's a policymaker, whether it's a banker, whether it is a educational institution. So I'm really puzzled. So what I thought a better way of tackling this would be to show tangible benefits to farmers from this intervention that everybody understands.
Right.
If I say that, okay, farmers' incomes have gone up, then they say, oh, fine, please, let's do more of it. Costs of cultivation have gone down. Oh, great. But if I tell them that I'll reduce the CO2 in the air and please give me money, nobody's going to give me money.
True.
So it is, in one sense, a tricky way of solving the problem. Not an elegant way, but that's the only way I have. That I had to show tangible benefits and hope that there is a awakening that not just for the tangible benefits, but then for our health, for our future generations. So I really don't know. I mean, it's what I'm doing is a practical way, but definitely there are so many other parameters that need to change, and that's really unfortunate. On the one hand, we are running out of time, and nobody feels the urgency. Are our scientists feeling that urgency? So I'm really puzzled, but I have found a solution that, instead of talking about climate change, I talk about farmers' livelihoods and, consumer health, and then say that, climate change mitigation is a byproduct.
Absolutely, sir. Absolutely. I completely agree with you. And as you very nicely put, finally tackling climate change is a balancing act between the present and the future. So, given that, whatever decisions and actions we take today, we'll have to demonstrate that it's making a difference to the people who are actually experiencing it in a language they understand. And I think that's what, resource building, resilience building in the resource, income increase for the farmers is something that they understand, and definitely there would be a lot of buy-in as we go forward. So now, given that you've been part of building a rich evidence base, if I may say so, through this initiative, what we could easily term as lighthouse initiatives. Now, these are the ones which definitely will kind of make a larger impact as we go forward. So, given that adaptation, as we talk about, whether we call it resilience building or adaptation, is a iterative learning by doing approach at the end of the day. So, what lessons? First and foremost, as a science, as an evidence based building exercise, the ZBNF initiative can give us. Secondly, also, you very nicely put across that there's a lot of importance that needs to be given to dissemination of information, not just generation of information. So, the communication is something that has to be at the heart of any such initiative. So, your insights on that would be very helpful for anybody who is working in this space.
Yeah, I think it is important to have evidence on impacts on livelihoods, resilience, and we found one more very important piece of evidence which is really helping me to mobilize resources. And that actually stemmed from a research done by CSTEP, was the water requirement in ZBNF in natural farming is anywhere 40 to 60% less, and thereby electricity consumption is less. So I'm using this piece of research and telling the state government that the savings in electricity subsidy are enough to finance the program.
Right, right.
The impact on farmers' livelihoods is again the cost. Cost of this transformation can very easily be met from avoidance of two subsidies. One is the subsidy on chemical fertilizers and the subsidy on electricity. So we can save this, even if we save 25% of the electricity subsidy, that is more than enough to finance the transformation.
Right.
So these are very tangible. I'm not even going into the intangibles. Very tangible way in which policymakers can understand that this is something which needs to be done. I'm pushing on that front.
Right.
The other more important thing which is taken into account by policymakers is how many people have adopted this. How many people's lives are changing? You may have the best of a solution, but if only one person adopts it, then nobody is going to pay attention to this. So I believe in what I call as a tipping point phenomenon. So this year, 16% farmers in Andhra Pradesh would have been enrolled into natural farming.
Mm.
So I believe we are at a tipping point.
Right.
So therefore, there is a how do you scale up itself is very important science, and I believe in tackling climate change, in tackling various public health issues. If we don't have this mechanism of being able to reach to the last person and staying with that person till the behavior change happens. See, what we are doing in our program is not only taking the knowledge to the farmer, but staying with the farmer for the next 5 years, 7 years, till the behavior change happens and is internalized by the farmers. So, for 60 years, they've been using chemicals. Now it's like a de-addiction. So it can't happen just by sending a letter to him saying that this is bad. This is the great knowledge that we have. It doesn't happen like that. So de-addiction process, or what we call as a hand-holding process, mutually supporting process. So that requires these collectives of women, collectives of youth, collectives of farmers, and somebody credible going to them with technology. So who can be more credible than the farmer who has practiced it and therefore is able to tell them that, look, I have gone through this painful process and these are the results. You come to my farm, you see this. So these two we brought together, And then we brought it under a government umbrella. So that carries its own, authority. There's a convening power of the government. So as I mentioned, those pillars are very important. Otherwise, taking technology to, in India, we have about 115 million farmers. And unless every farmer changes, we cannot dream of climate change mitigation. But otherwise, it is a very simple process because the farmer is not losing by this change, at the same time causing a huge benefit to society. And that is why I very firmly believe in the current context of this climate emergency, the only God we have to look up to is the farmer. So only she can save us and nobody else. So, how do we serve her? How do we reach out to her? How do we propitiate her? That has to be the solution.
Right. So wonderful, sir. So where there is a problem, there lies the solution at the end of the day. It seems very simple, but then how do how to kind of mobilize that and motivate people to get there? So now I would like to ask you finally, how can think tanks like CSTEP actually kind of play a role in, let's say, faster adoption of, if I can say, so climate resilient technologies. Now, technologies here are all nature based, as you very clearly said. The answer is within them. So, how can we and many others who are working in this space play a role in this?
Uh, I I don't have a simple answer, but I believe that we need a coalition. We need an ecosystem of champions.
Mm.
So I would like to see Step as a champion. I would like to see the different state governments as champions, NGOs as champions. So I believe somewhere a coalition of outliers has to come, and that creates such a huge pull, then the rest of the country follows. So I don't know if I'm making sense, but I always believe in picking outliers, because the very fact that C-Step came to us, voluntarily came to us, saying that how can we help you? I mean, that's very unusual. C-Step came to us saying that, look, we are doing something very important. Can we be a partner? Please tell us which is the area we can work. And then we had a discussion. Okay, what is C-Step strength and what is it that we require? So there was a fit, and this research that they have come out with reference to Andhra Pradesh is so path breaking, and that is something which is I'm able to take forward to other states. So there are no linear answers. It's a question of each one believing very passionately that there is a crisis, there is something that each one of us has to do. So if these two are there, then you will see the path yourself. Nobody has to tell you. I mean, nobody asked C-Step to come to us. But then there is some feeling, there was some sense in C-Step that yes, something good is happening, let's join. So I believe that enlightened self-interest, passion, and conviction that we cannot fail our future generations. Without that, any case, if we don't do anything, we are anyway going to see end of humanity in the next 20, 30 years if we don't do anything. That is certain. Now, is there an agency? Do we have a role in preventing this? What is that role? And I believe very strongly that the most important agency that we have is in changing the land management practices, which can have a very, very significant impact on climate change. That's our agency. Rest are not in our hands. There's already a greenhouse gas. There's already so much of CO2 there. There's some huge billions of tons bubbling in the oceans. So, so what is our agency? I said the farmer gods. So can we maximize coming together? Can we maximize the potency, effectiveness, capability of the agency and everyone who is promoting this? So I believe that is the way forward.
Thank you so very much, sir. I think you kind of summed it up very nicely that, each and every one of us, uh, not just the scientists, not just the farmers, not just the policy makers, but everybody in the society has a role to play. And we should do what we could in our own spaces. So if we can do that, and of course, never forgetting that, there is an important role that land as a resource plays, and we should respect it. We should do what's needed to keep that resource intact. So, keeping that in mind, I think that's a wonderful message that's there for all of us who are gathered here. Thank you so very much, sir. I really appreciate, and I would like to thank on behalf of C-STEP for joining us in this wonderful discussion series that we are having. And thank you so much, sir. Thank you.